Hey guys, I'm going on vacation for about a week and I've got a little video to kind of tide you over. These are two mini reviews of A1 Games titles that I made for a collaboration with my friend Alma. She had a few friends of hers make a bunch of reviews about basically going over the entire catalog of A1 Games, which is this budget games producer in Japan. I know Schnick contributed to it. I know Sean contributed to it. I actually have appearances in all three parts of the video. The links to the original collaboration videos are down in the description, but these are just my two main bits that I made for those videos. So enjoy. I don't think you're going to fit in my suitcase that way. Yeah, that's much better. Alright, this is the game Shooter Spaceshot, a title that is incredibly awkward to say, a massive red flag that this comes from Japan, and sounds like an offhanded spoof game from a background gag of The Simpsons. The game loads up in a cutscene of three characters who never get any introduction, talking about how they just destroyed a bunch of enemy bases belonging to some empire, but the secret weapon they were looking for is still loose, and so they have to destroy 5 more bases. It's like being thrown into the middle of a sci-fi epic with no recap or primer whatsoever. Or like trying to watch Space Thunder Kids.
子供ってバカにしないでよ。だってなあ。いいよ。父さんからの指令教えない。
Our characters are the main hero, Nigo, a girl who the instruction booklet labels a boy, who the wiki calls a girl, and then a boy, and then wincingly an it. And Nigo always already knows everything that's going on, somehow knows absolutely everything about how the enemy works, is also a tech genius that built an AI helper that doesn't do shit, and naturally has to fight the entire enemy armada by themselves. The other characters are Wells, who constantly whines about absolutely everything, is always getting distracted, and openly resents ever having to do his job, and there's Cyber, who... I don't really know why he's here. He kind of just goes along with whatever's happening and has no personality to speak of. Oh, and they also have POSS, a cutesy robot that only ever seems to spout data that Nigo already knows. You do know that POS is an abbreviation for piece of shit, right? You might want to rename that robot you made there. I feel like I owe a massive apology to Team Star Fox. Fox McCloud's teammates at least pretend to help out. They have actual plot significance, or, you know, they're drop-dead sexy. Shooter Spaceshot is a 2D shooter where loads of enemy projectiles fill the screen at once. I'd call it a bullet hell shooter, except the game has an actual life bar and infinite continues, whereas fellow bullet hell shooter Star Soldier Vanishing Earth has 1-hit deaths, 3 lives, lose all your power-ups whenever you take a hit, and also eat shit. The game has no item pickups, but you have 4 weapons at all times. You have a basic Vulcan shot, a homing missile that locks onto enemies, a boost that makes you invulnerable while it's active, and a giant piss-off laser beam! The boost and the laser both run off an overdrive meter at the top of the screen, but the overdrive refills so fast as to be barely an inconvenience. Every now and then you just have to let the Kamehameha recharge for 1 second. That's it. In addition, you have 2 satellite lasers that surround your ship and lock into specific directions, allowing you to shoot at different angles. It's a lot like Scat, the underappreciated NES game, except Scat had you locking or unlocking the satellites with a simple button press. To aim them in Spaceshot, you have to stop moving and shooting for a second and then move left or right to get them pointed exactly where you want, and then fire continuously to keep them positioned. Really? There are only about 5 unused buttons on the controller, and you choose to map this to insanely specific movement in a precision-based bullet hell shooter? The satellite's positioning also dictates the homing of your missiles, which makes the missiles borderline useless. That is, until you get to the boss and can cram about 1,000 missiles up its ass at once, because the game only lets you lock onto 16 enemies at a time, when there are never anywhere close to 16 enemies on the screen. Honestly, the sheer number of combat options available to you at once makes Spaceshot a refreshing and fun shooter, and once you get used to the boost for high mobility, it's a kinetic and fun experience. Surely the game's level designs won't curb the fun factor of the base gameplay, right? Right? The biggest annoyance to the gameplay is that enemies will spawn and float along planes in front of or behind where you're able to move and shoot. With a game that runs entirely on twitch reflexes and observation, it's confusing to see non-stop enemies that haven't spawned yet, and it's frustrating to have enemies just drop into the screen anywhere at a moment's notice. This really comes to a head in level 3, where the enemies all actively try to crash into you for one-hit kills before you even know what's happened. You either have to memorize the stage or abuse the shit out of the invincibility dash to make it through, only to get curb stomped by the level 3 boss. Everything it does kills you in one hit, its body takes up like half the screen, and it opens with a tracking laser that takes up the other half of the screen. If you survive that, he covers the entire screen in bullets, and if you survive that, he just wildly flails all over the entire screen. Even the dash doesn't seem to avoid most of this. If you don't get here with all of your extra lives, you're hosed. But then the level 4 boss just sits there on his ass letting you shoot him, so the difficulty curve is all over the place. Level 4 also happens to be set inside a volcano, with segments where your ship is tinted yellow by the lighting, and it blends into the lava and makes it hard to see what you're doing. In theory, anyway, this legit only took me 2 tries. It feels like the intervening cutscene where Wells freaks out because he ostensibly did something stupid off screen is longer than the actual level.
覚えてないんだからさ、意味ありげなこと言うなよ。いいじゃん別に。大したことじゃないよ。
通常の94%でした。
わけわかんねえよ。
Oh, sweet cripes, anyone who ever complained about Slippy owes the man an apology. Oh, and even though the entire game you've been continuously firing off missile salvos that take up vastly more mass than your entire ship, it's only after the 4th mission that they need to stop and reload. They inject a little bit of plot before the final battle, where this whole time you've been fighting a weapon that's meant to evolve until it becomes perfect, and Nigo's dad warns her that this thing was invented by the Republic and then given to the Empire so the Republic can rule the world. Apparently this is bad, even though the Empire are the bad guys, implying the Republic are the good guys, and wouldn't the winner of the war control the world anyway? And how is the Republic going to steal back this ultimate weapon after the Empire has perfected it for them? I think the writer was just bashing keys on a keyboard and letting autocorrect write the story. That or the guy writing the subtitles had no idea what the hell was going on. Case in point, this shadowy evil figure who is obviously female and pulling the strings, credited as Unknown Man 3.
計画の変更はないと考えてよろしいのですね。理解しているのかと聞いています。
The last level actually takes place in space for the first time in a game called Spaceshot. I like the visual design of us fighting through a space fleet, but the scrolling background is so detailed and busy that it's legitimately hard to tell what's going on. After only a few minutes, you hit the final boss, a robot that you have to fight 3 friggin' times, because through some technobabble that's impossible to follow, POSS is secretly evil and gives the robot the data it needs to become perfect. I told you should have knocked another S off the back of his name. And they don't drop a checkpoint until the boss's 3rd form, probably because this thing's got an obnoxious amount of health and takes forever to kill. But all 3 forms only have a few basic attacks that are piss easy to memorize and dodge. So again, what the hell happened with that 3rd boss to make it so hard? And the fights have been too short for me to care until now, but why don't the bosses have health bars? Slippy gives you the health bars! The boss dies, our heroes go on the run, and yay, they revived that pet robot that was evil and betrayed us. And that's good, I guess? Whatever, the game's over. Shooter Spaceshot is a fun enough game, but it's also only about half an hour long, a large proportion of which feels taken up by annoying cutscenes of annoying characters and a half-baked story that makes no sense. Still, if I've only got a little bit of time and want to pop on something for a quick and amusing time killer, I could see myself playing Spaceshot again, which puts it into the same category as Pepsi Man. I think the developers had a much lower opinion of the game than I had, though, because if you look up the memory card data that the game uses for settings, it's labeled shit. You know what? I'm not going to argue. Battle Hunter on PlayStation 1, another budget Japanese title published by A1 Games and developed by Success. Can't tell if that's manifesting or tempting fate. When you start up the game, you create a character from one of several Final Fantasy-esque isometric sprites, and you spec some starting points to your RPG stats of health, defense, attack, and movement, and you work for a guy who wants you to raid dungeons for him. And just as I was expecting some action RPG like Diablo, surprise numbnuts! Battle Hunter is a board game. A board game for 4 players because this game on a console with 2 controller ports was made for 4 people. Between that and the Super Nintendo 16-bit pixel graphics, I'm growing ever more confused as to why this is a game on the PlayStation. I'll save you the pain of me trying to figure out how the game works because this thing has no tutorial of any kind. The 4 human and AI players are dropped onto a board and taken in turns moving one at a time. The board is filled with boxes, boxes contain items, items can be sold for money, and money is needed to level up. One of the board's items is marked as the key item, you have no idea where it spawns, and if a player grabs the key item and heads for the exit, the game ends. The key twist to all this is that the game also has combat. You can attack the other players if you run into them, and NPC monsters will spawn at random to hassle the competitors. And you can also set traps to stun players, hamper their movement, or drop all their inventory items. It sounds like a cool game, but there's one little detail that completely tanked the game into pure enragement fuel for me. Everything that you do is determined by dice rolls. How far you can move is determined by a 6-sided die, which means there will be a lot of turns where you roll dick and can't do anything, and there's nothing you can do about it. And every time you go to fight an enemy, you roll 2 dice for offense, and they roll 2 dice for defense. So whether or not you can actually do something productive on any given turn, or succeed at literally anything that you attempt, boils down almost exclusively to luck. Your dice rolls are augmented by your character stats, and you continually draw cards that you can use to temporarily boost attacks, defense, or movement, but the other players have similar stats and their own hands of cards, so everything is on an even keel at all times. And when the computer is rolling all the dice to determine if you can do anything against itself, it's hard not to get pissed at the game every time something goes catastrophically wrong. I'm sorry, but this combat system pissed me the hell off. The dice rolling means that not only is there maybe a 50-50 shot of whether or not you can even land a hit, but most of the hits that I land deal 1 to 3 damage if I'm lucky. And players at level 1 start with about 20 hit points, so downing a single enemy takes forever. And combat doesn't work like Pokemon or Final Fantasy where you're both stuck there until someone dies. You throw 1 attack, the target may throw a counterattack, and your turn ends. You get 1 shot at an opponent at a time before everyone takes a new round of turns, and that 1 shot will almost never actually do anything. Taking down a single enemy means sitting on your ass just attempting attacks turn after turn after turn, hoping that something eventually works, dragging the game to an unbearable crawl while all the other players move around you. And despite the RPG trappings, you don't learn magic or gain additional attacks with guaranteed damage or status effects or range as the game goes on. Running up to someone's face to huck dice at them is your only attack option. And just to add insult to injury on how long it takes to kill people, players can heal. Yeah, there's a rest option where you pass your turn to take an extra card and recover health, meaning that players can heal vastly more damage than you can dish pretty much any time that they want. The combat is balanced to where fights can drag out literally forever. If you kill another player, you get to steal one of their items, and dying doesn't remove you from the game, but it slashes your maximum health in half. And before you all break your necks in the mad rush to compare it to Dark Souls, trust me, Dark Souls is way nicer than this. If you die, your health bar doesn't come back between games. You have to go to the hospital and spend what little cash you have restoring that health bar 1 individual point at a time, using the same money that's both hard to get and needs to be stockpiled to level up. Dying once means having to grind multiple missions to undo it. As annoying as it is to fight the other players, it's even worse fighting the NPC monsters. There's no way to find out their stats, meaning that all battle damage is pretty much arbitrary, and you don't even know how much health they have. They also spawn at random and seem to relentlessly stalk a single player at a time, meaning the game will just get pissed the hell off and randomly screw players to where they can barely play. And you have no idea how badly this system could screw you. You cannot move through other players or enemies, and the randomly generated maps can leave paths that are 1 square wide. Meaning about the only actual strategy the game has comes from parking in the middle of chokehold paths to trap players. But watch how badly this can go for you. This was the very first game of this that I played. One of the other players killed me because I was testing out the combat, so I randomly respawned in a little 1 square nook off the side of the stage. Whereupon a monster immediately came over and boxed me in. I am trapped to where I physically cannot move, and I have no option but to sit here until one of us dies, all while the computer gets to keep playing unimpeded. And ha ha, jackass, keep giving the guy who can't move cards that boost his movement. Again, this was my first game of this thing. Starting to see why it pissed me off. The game does have a few additional mechanics. You can pick up flags, but the game doesn't explain what they do. I think that flags give unseen buffs to your dice rolls for the rest of that one board, but I can't safely guarantee that. Even the manual doesn't tell you what these damn things do, only saying that they have some type of influence on the character once they are acquired. They don't know how their own game works. And even though you can alter the little information windows for each character to check inventory and shit, you can't see who's got flags or tell what buffs they grant. And even if you do change these displays, I've had games where they changed right back the literal instant that I took my turn. For some reason. And it is a royal pain in the ass that you can't check the map to see where players or items are located, which just strips even more potential strategy out of this husk. The only real strategic element to all this is that you can identify items instead of selling them, which may give you a few buffs if you hold on to them in your inventory, like these pants that grant me +1 escape. So if I get into combat and I try to escape to dodge fire when I think the defense option does the same thing, if my random roll is exactly 1 off from the opponent's random roll, then these pants have me covered. I also found a scanner that gives me 10% extra chance to dodge traps. I'm guessing there are items to boost attack strength or movement, but that's more RNG that never seems to be on my side, and a lot of grinding, plus it means screwing yourself out of more cash for some other gameplay progression. At least the AI isn't too bright, since I've seen enemy players run in actual circles, ignore me carrying a vital item while they go for flags, or just sit in place getting wrecked by monsters rather than even trying to fight back. Like, the AI isn't even your main concern, it's the mechanics themselves that are out to bone you. At least the game doesn't actually care if you're the one who gets the key item. It doesn't even seem to get you that much money if you get it. This is good, because the odds are pretty damn high that the key item spawned clear on the other side of the map, and you will not be able to swipe it from the player who grabs it first. Alright, I saved up 1,000 credits, and now I can level up. I can finally buff my stats to... Leveling up gets you a single point that you can assign to a single stat. And for movement and defense, it takes multiple points to even do anything. Crap! Oh, and don't bother healing if you're about to level up, because I wasted a bunch of cash to restore my health, only to find that leveling up restores your health! Little heads up would have been nice, before I flushed like $600 down the toilet! At least it's not that hard to rack up 1,000 credits for a level up, so let's go back to the doctor and... What?! The price to level up increases as the game goes on. Level 2 costs 1,000 credits, level 3 costs 1,500 credits, level 4 costs 2,500 credits, and I didn't play any further because the grind walls can bite me! And the prices to heal and identify items also increase as you level up too, because the game hates you! Every now and then the game gives you what I think is a story mission, though I hesitate to say that because that would imply that there's a story. The first mission has you needing to grab an escaped patient for the hot nurse who runs the hospital, who ominously doesn't reveal why he escaped. The second story mission has you tracking down a corporate spy who stole a disk of confidential employee records for a company that does something. And this second story mission is where I got so disgusted and pissed off at the game that I called it quits for the sake of producing this video. You see, to get the disc, you need to kill this dude in the purple suit. Problem: even triple teaming this guy with an NPC and an AI player, the shitty dice-based pure luck combat system meant that I could barely lead any damage. And any time that the damage did finally start to pile up, he'd rest and heal several turns worth of damage at once. You have to kill a guy that heals faster than you can damage him. Even one turn where I rolled double sixes, the strongest attack in the game, he rolled such high defense in response that it barely did squat. Yeah, this was the point where it was driven home for me how broken this thing is because, again, combat balance to where fights can easily go on forever. I did eventually win this mission by getting insanely lucky. The dude ran away and I just barely rolled high enough to chase after him. Eventually he stopped drawing defense cards and I drew a +9 attack card to finish him off. But I was still stuck in this obnoxious, boring-ass level for 20 some odd minutes waiting for that lucky break so that I could play the game at a basic level. And the salt in the wound is that, based on my doctor's bill, doing the crappy story missions barely even gets you any money. And even if there is a story, this game gives you zero introduction to its setting or its characters, so there's nothing to build a narrative where you give a shit! Broken missions, tedious combat, obnoxious grind walls, monotonous gameplay? Yeah, I'm done. I kind of felt bad slamming the game when Alma said that she really enjoyed it. But then I found out she was playing it in multiplayer with a friend, and she didn't even go past level 2. Bad feelings gone. Here's the thing, Battle Hunter is basically a board game that you are asked to play dozens upon dozens of times for hours on end. And I go to a weekly board game night where there are board games that I do play over and over, and I love them. But the board games that get played all the time have replay value. It's not just the same experience over and over again. In Battle Hunter, you pretty much do the exact same thing every single game, and the dice rolls just determine how successful you are at the one thing that you do. That is nowhere near interesting enough to sustain several hours of campaign. Or to make my point a little more succinctly, I own Monopoly for the Nintendo 64. There's a reason why Monopoly doesn't have a story mode.